to fulfill a man's fantasy of what a woman ought to be. In Kyoto today, they're a mysterious relic of old Japan. Painted dolls that scurry through the streets before disappearing behind closed doors. Are they high-priced courtesans, mistresses of seduction, or something more elusive?
There's a lot of mystery to being a geisha, I think. The society seems very closed and secret.
I think they're high-priced prostitutes. The geisha's role is for entertainment.
I wouldn't like the idea of serving men. I believe in equal rights for men and women.
I guess a geisha is whatever the customer wants, really.
Whatever a geisha is, it's more than a role. It's an all-encompassing way of life. Umechika is a maiko, a second-year apprentice. She's still adjusting to the changes.
When I first started, there were many times that I was scolded, and I didn't even know why. Then I realized that this geisha world is so different from the world I used to know.
In past generations, most girls were born into the trade or sold into it by destitute parents. Umechika made the choice herself. She would trade her identity and her family for a new life as a geisha.
Since I was a little girl, I always admired apprentice geisha and wanted to be one. But the first time I told my parents, my father said absolutely no way. But I still really wanted to be a geisha, so I came to Kyoto.
Kyoto is Japan's cultural heart. In an increasingly westernized country, it's one of the last places where strict geisha training continues. All the geisha live in restricted quarters in the city, the only places where you're likely to see them. Umechika began knocking on doors. But everyone said she was too old at 19 to start training. But then she found Umeno, a retired geisha who runs a small tea house. Umeno took one look at the young woman and decided she had the face of a geisha. She gave her a new name based on her own, and Umechika was born. But that was only the beginning of a long, grueling path.
To become a geisha, it takes a lot of training. Many leave because they can't take the training.
Mary White is a professor of anthropology at Boston University.
It's a very hard life. They are under a contract to a geisha house usually, which would be their house where they would live as well. And they would have very few times when they, for example, could go home to visit their parents.
For 5 years, Umechika must submit to geisha boot camp. A rule or a tradition governs everything she does. Every 10 days, the hairdresser twists and pulls her hair into the maiko's traditional style. The pressure is so strong, it produces a permanent bald spot. Every night, she must sleep on a rigid cushion that keeps her awake, just to maintain her hairstyle. Her routine follows the same pattern every day, with almost no time for herself. Classes consume half of it. The rest is spent preparing herself for an evening of clients. Her signature makeup is so elaborate, it takes an hour and a half. Once, the makeup had lead in it, which would prematurely age a geisha's face. Every day, Umechika must transform the girl she is into a traditional icon of feminine beauty. And she goes through all this effort just to achieve a look designed hundreds of years ago to stand out in candlelight.
I have seen so many girls just quit, but that only strengthens my resolve. If I quit now, all those things I had put up with and worked so hard on would become meaningless.
Mama Umeno dresses her, but it's not with a mother's loving hands. She's a businesswoman, and Umechika is her prize investment. The tea house foots the bill for all her training, including hundreds of thousands of dollars for lavish kimonos and accessories. In return, Mama takes all of her income. Umechika receives no salary and gets just 2 days off a month. In the West, an arrangement like this would be outlawed. Here, it's the path to an exalted, if mysterious, position in Japanese society.
What most Japanese businessmen think when they think geisha is a person through which they can demonstrate their power and their status. A businessman, if he has the funds, he's going to be able to take his clients, his customers, and his colleagues out to a geisha evening. But you don't do that just through money. You have to do it through connections. You're showing your networks as well as your money.
Say geisha to a Westerner, and most people think high-class hooker. But though it's true that some early geishas were prostitutes, the profession actually evolved from court entertainers in the 1600s.
The word geisha itself, of course, doesn't mean prostitute at all. It means artistic person. But the art itself is the art of a special kind of allure, even seduction. The arts that a geisha would purvey would be dancing, wonderful ancient dances of the court, and they'd play musical instruments as well, and the arts of conversation and literature.
But in today's Japan, few are willing to work so hard to learn the geisha's arts. One person who rejected the lifestyle is Mama Umeno's own daughter, Yuko. In the past, a geisha's daughter would follow her mother into the trade, but Yuko said no.
If I were a maiko or a geisha, the things I would really miss would be activities that other girls enjoy, but I wouldn't have the freedom to do. Like driving a car, going to dinner, or karaoke with friends, or traveling.
Yet to wealthy Japanese men, the rigor of maiko training is all part of the mystique. Peter McIntosh is a Canadian, but he too fell under the geisha spell 10 years ago when he came to live in Japan.
I guess it's just something you don't see anywhere else in the world. When you see these beautifully kimono-clad women walking through the streets, it just says, paint me, photograph me, write a poem about me. It's just something that really grabs you.
And Peter puts his money where his mouth is. Alien though it may seem to most Western men, to spend thousands of dollars on a dancing girl who keeps her clothes on, Peter says he could have a Ferrari for all he spent on geishas. But to him, entering this exclusive world is worth every penny.
What it's all basically about is when you make that first step inside the tea house, you're supposed to forget about all the worries that went on that day. And what the major thing that customers are so relaxed about is what goes on behind closed doors stays behind closed doors, or should.
Coming up, how far will a geisha go to please a client? For the most powerful men in Japan, the tea house is their fantasy world. A place to relax, discuss a little business, and let their hair down. For Umechika, it's showtime. And since she's still learning, a nerve-wracking lesson in entertaining men often twice her age. Nao Souza is a full-fledged geisha who knows all the tricks of the trade.
An evening with a geisha, to most especially Western perceptions, is a seduction of a kind. That is, you're supposed to end up in bed with a geisha. Well, in fact, what she does is tease and cajole. She boosts your ego. She makes every little word you say sound like it, it came out of Shakespeare. And she's really a past mistress of that art of making the man feel good, short of going to bed.
For the men, just being close to the geisha seems to be enough.
These geisha represent something beyond my everyday world. To meet these extraordinary women is in a way a learning opportunity, and a way to elevate myself to a superior being.
The geisha who are attending to the men are precious commodities. They are like being close to the crown jewels. A Westerner might think that a geisha is in the room listening to men and following their every whim and catering to them. But actually what a geisha is doing is manipulating and organizing. She's the powerful person in the room. The men are waiting for cues from her. What game are we going to play next? Am I up to it?
As the evening unfolds, conversation makes way for drinking games. Umechika realizes a bit too late that she's going to have to learn to pace herself. Every move a geisha makes is supposed to be perfect. But in her excitement, Umechika spills the sake. It's a tense moment. She hopes the other guests didn't notice. But her graceful dancing makes up for tonight's blunders. Half a century ago, the virginity of a maiko like Umechika would often be auctioned to the highest bidder to mark the end of her training. That practice is outlawed now. Most of her customers barely come close enough to touch her. But that doesn't mean they don't have fantasies.
If I tell you I have no ulterior motive, it would be a lie. Of course there is an ulterior motive. But restraining this desire is the joy and beauty of it.
But what's the beauty of it for Umechika as she struggles with her training regimen? What keeps a girl who loves M&M committed to the life of a geisha?
I can do things that a normal schoolgirl can't do. For instance, I can go to see kabuki theater in these clothes and go to expensive restaurants with clients. I can talk to people I can't meet normally, dignitaries and CEOs of major corporations.
And Umechika gets to perform in special festivals to show off her skills as a dancer. It's the realization of her childhood dreams.
Of course, every once in a while, I wish that I could just be a normal girl. But it's like once or twice a year. It is hard, but I know I'm doing something that I really enjoy. And that's why I can endure it.
It's a life that few young girls today choose to pursue. But an ancient calling that links them to entertainers all over the world.
becoming a geisha is so much investment in hard work and training.